morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Ooh. Some smiling, lovely, beautiful faces here. Yeah, so today we begin a little new series. It's a big new series, and we begin by remembering that because we are expressions of divine love, we are love. Our nature is one of love. And because we are all created from the one infinite divine life, the one source, we're all expressions of this one source, we're all connected with each other. We're all one with each other. Therefore, our nature is to give love, is to give and receive love and compassion with each other and have some for ourselves as well. And when that doesn't happen, then something has gotten in the way. What is that? What pulls us away, what disconnects us from our true divine nature and causes us to act in ways that are unkind, hurtful? What causes other people to behave in ways that are unkind, hurtful, even violent? And more importantly, how can we get back to our natural way of being and inspire others to get back to their natural love and compassion? That is the premise of this study that we're going to do for the next few weeks based on this book, NonViolent Communication, by Marshall Rosenberg. This is the premise. This is what we are about the next few weeks. And going through this book, I'm really struck by how much it's in alignment with unity. Because it's kind of all about remembering and reconnecting with our highest divine self. Although it doesn't say that in those words, but it's there, right? And in fact, looking through it, I am seeing all 5 unity principles reflected in this work. UCP members? 5 basic principles? Verse 1, God is all there is. Or you could say it as universal, the universal intelligence is all that there is. Second one is that we are all expressions of it. Third principle is that our thoughts and our beliefs and the way that we process life shapes our experience. And 4, affirmation and affirmative prayer and meditation are the tools that we use to return to this, to reconnect with our highest divine self. Now, those words aren't used in this book. Meditate doesn't use those words. But he does talk about contemplation and positive intention, right? But particularly the 5th principle, it's not enough to know these truths. We must practice them. We must bring them into our world, into our lives. And so this beautiful idea that is so present in unity is reflected in a completely, just a different way of looking at it, but a very practical way. Something that we can actually practice in our relationships and in our lives. So he begins this book with a quote, his quote, where he says, what I want in my life is compassion, a flow between myself and others based on a mutual giving from the heart. So that's where it begins. That's where this is rooted, in that idea. And, Rosenberg has since passed away, I think about 10 years ago or so. He was raised in the 40s, and he was Jewish, raised in a Jewish family, and he experienced a great deal of anti-Semitism and name-calling and bullying when he was a kid, and continued on, as discrimination when he was an adult. And when he was about 9, in 1943, his family moved to Detroit 1 week before the 1943 race riots, which I didn't know anything about that. I thought it was like this. I had to look that up, but yeah, it was a big thing. And it was right in his neighborhood. So his neighborhood was exploding with violence. And this had a big impact. All of these things had a big impact on him. And he became really interested in the importance of language in our communication with others, and began to develop a system for reconnecting us with our compassion, our compassionate self, and helping others reconnect with theirs. And the system he called nonviolent communication, taking that word from Gandhi and his nonviolent action, which he used very successfully, basically freeing an entire country, right? And our own, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. used the whole, nonviolent protest, nonviolent action to end Jim Crow laws and finally pass the Civil Rights Act. So this is a word that, has a long history. And some people don't like that word. They don't like nonviolent communication, so they call it compassionate communication or just NVC. Doesn't matter. However you want to call it, it's the same thing. And so he began to take this system out into his work with families, with parents and teachers and institutions and, employers and employees, and then out even further in the middle of war-torn countries like Rwanda and Sierra Leone, and also helped with negotiate between Bosnia and Croatia when they were at war, and helped facilitate many discussions between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Where is he now? We need him now. And that's the thing. This is something that needs to be constantly practiced. It needs to be constantly practiced because it is too easy to get pulled into our ego self, that ego-driven separation feeling that we can stand and say, well, I'm right. You're wrong. You're the one that's causing my misery, and boy, you're going to pay for it. It's too easy for people to get into that. Forget their compassion, forget their oneness with each other. So this is just a way to, when we practice it, it's a way to remember, we're all one, we're connected. Our divine nature, our nature is one of giving and receiving love and compassion. This is a way to practice it. Now, just full disclosure, I am not a facilitator. There are certified NVC facilitators. I'm not one. I took a workshop years ago along with Chris Eagle. We brought facilitators in some number of years ago, and we did this over a course of a few weeks, and it was wonderful. But I am learning along with you, okay? Just to let you know. We're learning together. And so the crux of the NVC system, as far as I understand, is to become really aware of what we are feeling and to become very precise about it. And there is like a list, two pages long, 3 columns wide, of all of these different variations of feelings. It's not just sad and happy and angry. It's all of these different variations. And we want to get precise with what we're feeling because it helps us to become more precise with what we are needing. And that is important, to know what we're needing, know what the other person's needing, because very often we just kind of walk around feeling, just ill at ease, just like, I don't know, like a little underlying anger, just don't know what that is, therefore we don't know what we need. And it becomes easy to blame someone else or some situation for causing this, right? So when we become clear about it, it changes the whole picture. So we're encouraged to slow down, explore our feelings, and to awaken from this habitual, automatic response that often comes up in our communication with others, right? And to learn to kind of shift from these unconscious patterns that a lot of us have. I would say probably everyone has unconscious patterns at one time or another of either defending or attacking or withdrawing. That's a common defense mechanism we all have, right? And so instead of that, attacking or defending or withdrawing, we're learning a new way. And we're learning to pay attention to what it is we are really needing and what the other person is needing. And we learn language that helps us to be understood and to understand others. This is what this is about. Empathy is also a very big feature here of this work. Really understanding what might cause someone to behave the way they do. What might cause someone to speak to us the way they do. To get underneath and really kind of understand what is driving that. And that helps us open our heart and be compassionate and give with compassion, right? And so, the 4 basic components that make up NVC, which is where this starts, and then he sort of adds to it as we go along. But the 4 basic ones are, number 1, we observe. We observe concrete action, right? That is affecting our well-being. And the tricky part here is to keep our judgment out of it. We want to just pay attention to the facts. Just the facts, ma'am. Just facts. The second thing is our feelings. Right? We want to identify what we're feeling and state how we feel when we observe this behavior or this thing or situation. The third is needs. Now that we've identified our feelings, we're more likely to be able to identify our need and then state that need that corresponds with the feeling. And then the fourth thing is request. Now we make a request that is based on that need, that answers that need. So let me give you an example to kind of put this into, a real life situation. Well, let's say it's hypothetical. Hypothetical. Because my daughter would never do this. Let's say she comes to visit for the weekend. And maybe she leaves all of her clothes all over the floor. I didn't even know she had that many clothes. And they're all over the floor in the bathroom, in the bedroom where she's staying. And wet towels. Like, how many towels does this one girl need? And they're wet all over the floor and all over the bed. And she brings her cat when she comes to stay. And so the cat's got a litter box. She doesn't really clean out the litter box every day. So it begins to stink. And our dog is tempted to go help herself. Ew! Yeah. So, okay. So now I go, whoops, I am in real judgment here, aren't I? Right? I am in real judgment. I'm tempted to think she's lazy, she's unmotivated, she's disrespectful, right? So I have to go, whoops, if I want to, because here's the thing, it blocks compassion, right? It blocks compassion, and I love her. And more than anything, I want a relationship. I want connection. So I have to practice. This is where the practice comes in. Practice observing, just observing the facts, And now I can get to, I'm identifying the feelings. How does that make me feel? Right? How does that make me feel? Irritated, exasperated, exhausted maybe. So rather than yelling at her for the millionth time, pick up your clothes, come on, hang up the towels, clean up the, what do you think, you live in a pigsty? Which is not going to get me very far, is it? No, right? It's a demand, it's a whiny thing, it's just, she's going to ignore it. So instead, I can state my feeling based on what I'm observing, right? And you say that I'm observing. So when you leave your clothes all over the floor and the wet towels and you don't clean out the litter box, I feel frustrated, exasperated, exhausted, right? Now I identify a need that I might have. So I am needing more harmony and order in my environment and more understanding for my children. So then I state that, right? And then at the end comes the fourth thing is the request. Would you be willing to hang up your clothes and the towels and clean out the box every day that you are here? Now, there's no guarantee this is going to work. Wish me luck. But I'm more likely to get a positive response, right? Because she's connecting my feelings with my needs. I'm no longer a nagging mom. So this is kind of how it goes. And we're doing book study groups, 2 of them, right? One after the service in person, and then Chris Eagle is facilitating that one. I'm facilitating the one that is online on Monday evenings. You're free to join either one. And we'll go through these scenarios that, and you bring up, okay, how do I say that, in a way that will help me be more effective in what I want and also express more compassion. So please join either of those, and I look forward to that discussion. Yeah. Okay, so the other part of this that he talks about, which I mentioned there briefly, was the whole judgments part, right? Which he goes into detail in the 2nd chapter. And he calls this life-alienating communication. And also, or communication that blocks compassion, which I kind of can relate to a little bit better. Communication that blocks compassion. That's what it is, right? When we're in judgment. And he talks about 4 different ones, but I'm only going to briefly mention 2 because I want to get to an exercise that I think we'll have a lot of fun with this week. So the first one is moralistic judgment. And this is about naming somebody bad or wrong when they don't act in alignment with our values. When they're not acting in alignment with our values, we tend to name people bad or wrong, right? And so, like, she's selfish. He's lazy. That person's not very spiritual. They're selfish people. They're greedy people. He's a racist. She's a bleeding heart liberal. All of these are just ways that we are kind of attacking in our heart and blocking compassion because we're focusing on the wrongness of that person rather than what it is we're needing and not getting. That's where we want our focus, what we're needing and not getting. Because that's going to help us be more effective. So the example that he gives in the book is violence is bad, which I think we could probably all here kind of agree, right? But that's a moralistic judgment. So, it's making someone wrong. So he says instead, how about this? We say, I am fearful of the use of violence to resolve conflicts. I value the resolution of human conflicts through other means. So when you do that, you're stating what you're feeling and your values. So all of this is about getting precise about our language. And when we kind of shift our language, we shift how we think about things, right? We know this in Unity. When we start really paying attention to what we're saying and we shift our language, we shift our way of being. We shift our whole way of seeing things. So that's what this is. All right, so another form of life-alienating communication is denial of responsibility. So I think we would agree that each of us is responsible for our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own actions, right? But very often, our language doesn't reflect that. When we say things like, I have to, as if we didn't have a choice. I have to, rather than I choose to. So he points out that what we're doing in that is we're blaming other people or forces outside of us that are making us do things we don't want to do. You know? So, like, for example, he gives an authority or a boss or a spouse or social pressure, peer pressure, ways of, our social contracts or gender roles, or uncontrollable impulses. Uncontrollable impulses, like, the devil made me do it. Remember that? Devil made me do it. I'm not responsible for that. And so he goes through each one and explains why that's a fallacy. So, we want to kind of shift that whole thing. And you may be thinking right now, like, well, you understand, there are things that I have to do that I don't want to do, right? We all know that. Like, I got to pay taxes. I don't want to do that. I got to do things in my job that I don't really like. In order to keep the job, I got to, pay this big tuition for my child's, education. So we want to take a look at that and see if we can shift it. Shift the language of I have to I choose to, and connect it with what we value. So I choose to pay taxes because I value democracy, and I want good roads, public transportation, good libraries, and I want to make sure that all children, doesn't matter their economic status, have food and shelter and education. I value that. So I can change that thing. I choose to prepare dinner every night because I value good food, good nutritious food for myself and my family. I'm shifting that. I choose to attend 14 meetings a month because I value teamwork and figuring out the best way to do things together. So here is your fun work for this week. I want you to think about, pay attention every time you say, I have to do something. I have to do this. Pay attention, even when you're thinking it, and shift it. I choose to do this. I choose to. And let me tell you, the first thing that will happen is that your blood pressure will drop. Because you know what? I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do it, like suddenly we're so tense. So it will first fill us with peace. We'll have a sense of peace around this. And secondly, we move from being a victim to a victor. And explore those things that, really if there's something you feel like, I don't know, I have to do that, take a look at that. And he has examples in the book of, people who have decided, do I really have to do that? What would happen if I didn't? Can I find a different way to do this? So I look forward to having this discussion with you in the book study and about this and about all of the things that we talked about. We're reading the first chapter and discussing that one today, and then next week the chapter 2 and 3. In the meantime, open the heart to compassion, language reflecting that. We just set our intention and we practice it. Okay? Are you with me? Yes. All right. Let's do it. Namaste. Hi. If this video has inspired you, opened your heart, expanded your consciousness, filled you with hope, empowered you in some way, we encourage you to support what we offer here at Unity Center of Peace by making your donation now. And thank you.